turn of the 1980s, it was looking like the traditional roadster had been killed off once and for all by the hot hatch. Cars like the MGB were getting a little bit long in the tooth, the TR7 had failed to strike a note. The only thing really left on sale were cars like the Toyota MR2, I think the Fiat X19 had also gone by then as well. Then in 1989 something happened. Mazda unveiled their MX-5. It was a front-engined, rear-wheel drive roadster, just like the old British roadsters of the past. The car that they unveiled was lightweight, relatively low cost and well put together, took all the best attributes of cars like the Lotus Elan and the MGB and set out to remedy many of the pitfalls. The question is, 35 years on in this fourth generation car, is it still as good? Stick around and we'll find out. In 2012, Mazda announced they would be building a new generation of their MX-5 sports car, but this time it would be in collaboration with Alfa Romeo. But we learned shortly after that this sadly was not to be. But it doesn't mean a collaboration was completely off the table, because in 2014 another announcement was made to say that the new car would in fact be built in partnership with Fiat and Abarth. So we would have the MX-5 and the Fiat and Abarth 124 Spider, both using the same chassis but with their own engines and bodywork. By the end of 2014, the new generation of MX-5, known as the ND, was unveiled to the public, and by the following year production had already begun on the ragtop version. Now, with the third generation NC, Mazda had actually built a soft top and a folding hardtop, and the ND was to be no different. A year later, production started on the folding hardtop, which is the vehicle we're driving today. This would come to be known as the MX-5 RF, or retractable fastback. To some people, the idea of a folding hardtop on an MX-5 would sound like heresy. After all, it does bring some convenience, but it also brings extra weight, and the MX-5 was always prized on being a lightweight car. The NC, in fact, had, like many cars, become a little heavy compared to earlier generations. With the ND, though, Mazda has strived to keep the curb weight down, with the lightest versions of this car weighing in at around 960 kilos, and even the heavier versions coming in at around 1100 kilos, which is lighter than the NC. The MX-5 always did have a reputation for being great to drive, but also frugal with its four-cylinder engines. In a world where most manufacturers have resorted to turbocharging, Mazda's range of Skyactiv G engines are predominantly normally aspirated, ranging from 1.3 litres to just over 3 litres. The ones in the MX-5, though, you've got a choice of two. You've got a 1.5 litre with approximately 130 horsepower, or you've got the one in this car, which is a 2 litre with 158 horsepower. Now, in 2019, there were some revisions made. The 2 litre got a revised exhaust manifold that could purge the exhaust gases faster. These revisions gave the car a bump in power, I think about 180, 190 horsepower. It also allowed the engine to rev a little bit higher, taking the red line from 6,800 to 7,500. The Skyactiv G engines also benefit from variable valve timing and direct injection, giving them plenty of torque low down the rev range, but allowing them to rev out in a way that only a NA engine would do. This generation also got an electric power steering rather than the hydraulic system in previous cars. Again, this can be a rather controversial point, but admittedly in the MX-5 it's really not been an issue. What does all this add up to then? Well, a car that feels a lot more powerful than the numbers suggest. The 2-litre version will hit 60 in a claimed 7.5 seconds. Obviously the revised version of this one a little under 7 seconds. But the car just feels so much quicker. The steering, okay, it might be electric rather than hydraulic, but it feels so direct. The car's just so darty. Wherever you point it, it goes. Grip seems limitless. I say it's got this eagerness to change direction. The engine pulls cleanly at low revs, but likes to rev out as well. It just seems to tick all the boxes. The thing with the MX-5, it's always been about more than outright performance. It's the way the car feels. So when you climb on board, you've got a really compact cabin, and to be honest, if you're a 6-footer, you're probably going to be a bit cramped in here. For me, at around 5'9", 5'10", it fits like a glove. The steering wheel, if it was any bigger, I'd struggle to get in. If it was any smaller, well, it just wouldn't be right. Again, steering wheel, it's not excessively thick, it fits just about right. You've got all mod cons in here because it's a modern car, so you have got a few buttons on the steering wheel for things like cruise control and audio, but to be brutally honest, you're never really going to be fussed with them because you're going to be enjoying yourself far too much. Handbrake and gear lever, believe it or not, with the palm of my hand, I can actually touch the handbrake and the steering wheel at the same time, or the handbrake and the gear lever. That's how close everything falls neatly to hand. While we're on the subject of this interior, cabin quality overall feels pretty good. The car is really solid. I love how we've actually got some pretty conventional controls for the heating and ventilation. No messing around with touchscreens for anything like that. Now the car does have this touchscreen mounted up high for things like radio and navigation, though you can control a lot of that from this wheel and these buttons down behind the gear lever. If you are wanting Apple CarPlay and Android Auto on this car though, just bear in mind that certainly at this time it didn't come as standard, and I'm told it's quite an expensive optional extra, so that's something to look out for if you're considering buying one of these cars. As I say though, fit and finish is good. This is a top spec sport nav model, so it comes with things like leather seats. We've also got the Bose audio with the speakers built into the headrest. We've also got heated seats, which is always going to be a nice addition on any convertible car. Some of the touches I actually really do like is this one's got Alcantara trim on the dashboard. Above that we have actually got quite a lot of hard plastic, but to be honest, until you start touching it and tapping at things, you probably wouldn't really notice. All the switchgear feels really nice and solid. The button for the roof is actually down just in front of the gear lever to the left here. We've got a few buttons there, and in between there's a little panel, and it actually looks about the size and shape of an 8-track. I don't know whether that was an intentional touch, but yeah, something I actually found quite amusing. Storage in this car probably is one of its weaker points though. We don't have any door pockets. You've just got this tiny little cavity here in the door pull. You've also got a small storage area in this armrest, and it is very compact, and another one just above that behind you in this console. The boot though is actually not too bad, because what you've got is quite a square load space. Cars like the Mercedes SLK, well, they've got to squeeze the entirety of that folding roof in there, but the MX-5 RF, it's only this sort of tiger roof panel at the top that actually gets stowed away, and the rear glass. Even with the roof down, this area with the buttresses and this roll hoop, that all actually stays in place, so that doesn't have to be stowed away inside the body of the car. Now, it's not a huge load area by any stretch. Callum, who's loaning this car, does play golf, and he says he has had his a golf trolley in there, but you're certainly not going to get a full set of clubs in the back. You will get a medium-sized suitcase in there though, and Callum has actually toured Europe in this car and actually driven as far as Croatia in it. Another good point about the MX-5, fuel economy. Mazda claim this car will do about 30 to 40 mpg with this engine, obviously depending on whether that's urban or highway driving. There is also a 1.5 litre version which should be a bit better on fuel still. Now Callum tells me that over a space of about 600 miles he's actually seen the best part of 40 odd mile per gallon, which is really impressive for any car with a 2 litre engine. In the time I've been driving the car, obviously setting down someone to do drive-by shots and obviously giving it a bit of a blast at times as well, the car's actually currently returning 38.5 mpg. I mean, that's remarkable. My 1.2 litre turbo family C-segment hatchback doesn't do as well as that on fuel. A good manual gearbox has always been a strong point of a Mazda MX-5, and the engineers, well, they've been at it again. They've actually reduced the shift throw by a further 15%, giving it the shortest throw you're likely to find in any road car. They've also incorporated a triple shaft linkage with reverse on the same shaft as first gear, further reducing the weight of this car. So it's just a little things, a gram here and a gram there, and this is what it all adds up to. It's the kind of car that has always trod a fine line between all-out sports car and something that's usable every day. Mazda have also taken safety quite serious too. The car scored 4 out of 5 stars in Euro NCAP back in 2015. It scored over 80% in both adult and child safety for passengers, and it scored over 90% for pedestrian safety as well. That perhaps owing to an active HUD system. It actually only scored 64% though on active safety, although that doesn't mean the car doesn't have a lot of additional safety equipment. You've got things like lane departure warning and active stability control, along with many other additional features. It's hardly surprising really that this car has met with such critical acclaim. In the year that it launched, it actually took Car of the Year both in the UK and Japan. It also won World Car of the Year, World Car Design of the Year, and many other awards since, and actually continues to still pick up awards even in 2024. Now at launch the MX-5 could be had for £20,000. Sadly, like most things in this world, prices have been on the rise considerably. In 2024, if you want a new MX-5, well, you're looking at the thick end of £28,000. That's going to be for the soft top model with the 1.5 litre engine. Now, while we're on the subject, I wouldn't discard that 1.5 litre engine. In fact, I'd rather like to have a go in a 1.5 myself. I'm actually led to believe that that engine is quite characterful and revs out very much in the way that this 2 litre does. And as I say, the MX-5 has always been about more than outright speed. Another reason I'd like to try that 1.5 though is because of the suspension. You see, this 2 litre car has Bilstein dampers as standard. Now with those Bilstein dampers, I was surprised the car actually soaks up big bumps rather well. It goes over speed bumps with complete composure. Where it did seem to fall down a little bit though is on some of our rather nasty scarred B roads that we've got here in Britain. Yep. When you get the patchwork quilt roads and the washboard surface, it does seem to shake things around just a little bit. As I say, for the most part you wouldn't really notice, and certainly on twisting A roads and motorways and things, you're really not going to be aware. As I say, in towns as well, it soaks up the worst of what Britain's towns with their potholes and speed bumps has to throw at it. The 1.5 though does have the standard dampers, and I would be quite interested just to see how that compares. Now the RF version, as mentioned previously, you're going to pay a £1,900 premium for this folding tin top. Now if, like myself, you don't have a garage, and if it's likely that this car would have to be used as your daily, then maybe that's a premium that's well worth considering paying. If you do want this 2 litre though in the RF spec, well, prices are starting from closer to £37,000, and I'm sorry, but no matter how good this car is, that's just far too much money for an MX-5 in my opinion. I would be looking at a used model. I haven't devoted a great deal of time to it, but when I did have a quick look online, the used car prices for these NDs seem to start at under £15,000. In fact, I did see a couple of cars for a little over 13 grand, which, yeah, that could be really worth considering looking at. More importantly though, is the MX-5 a proper sports car? Well, it most certainly is. Nearest competitors to this I have driven are the Mercedes SLK. I've driven, granted they are older models, but I've driven the R171, which when you get on board actually does feel quite a lot like this car, owing to its compact dimensions. The R172 obviously a bit more modern and a little bit bigger. The thing with either of those cars is they do feel a bit more like an SL that's been shrunk down, sort of a compact GT. Both of the cars I drove were automatic as well. Now you can actually get an automatic in the MX-5 if you so wish, but to be honest, the manual gearbox in this car is so good, I feel you would be doing yourself a disservice by not going for the manual version, unless you really, really have to have an automatic. While we're on the subject of that automatic, do you know what they've called that gearbox? Yep, they've called it Skydrive. Skydrive to me sounds like one of those American fly-drive holidays, or perhaps something that you might have in a spaceship in some 1980s science fiction movie. So what's my take on the MX-5 then? Well, it really is every bit as good as you've ever been told it is. Everything just feels so pin sharp and direct. When you look out over this bonnet, well, the view you get out is very reminiscent of what I was looking at in that Corvette the other week, except the car is so much more compact and it's available in right-hand drive. It just suits our roads here in Britain so much better. It's got all the power that you're ever really going to need. Okay, so if you opt for this RF version, there is a bit of a blind spot over that left shoulder, but there hasn't been anything like as much of a problem as I thought it might be, because when I've had to do a turn in the road, it's not been a three-point turn. The turning circle on this car is as good as the very best of any small hatchback that you're likely to buy. This car really is everything that cars like the Mercedes SLK are not. This really is the best of both. It's got that agility that nothing this side of a Lotus Elan can match, but it's also got that just enough refinement and just enough practicality that you can use it every single day. I'd like to say a big thank you to Callum for bringing me this car out today. As you can probably tell, I've really enjoyed my time with this vehicle. If you like these sort of reviews, do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already done so, because there will be plenty more to come in the very near future. Also, if you've enjoyed this video, do please give us a thumbs up as well. Let YouTube know that you like what you're seeing, and I do love reading your comments as well. Perhaps there's something I've missed about this car that you feel we all ought to know. Drop that in the comments down below. Some people will be viewing this video a little bit earlier than others. If you're interested in early access to these car reviews, then do consider becoming a channel member. A channel memberships will cost from a mere £2.99 per month. So in other words, about the cost of a cup of coffee. For that, as I say, you'll get early access to videos. There'll also be some exclusive content thrown in there for good measure as well. As always, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you on the next video very, very soon. It's goodbye from me.